There's always a better way to do what you're doing right now. So be grateful. Now they're just like, oh my gosh, there's so much more to do, right? And I was like, no, programmatic is where my heart is. Amen. Welcome to another episode of the Programmatic Digest podcast. I am your host, Hélène Parker, and we have Brett Middleton back with our Programmatic Well-being Series. This is episode 2 out of the 4. Brett, welcome back. How are you doing?
Good to be back. I'm great. Thank you.
Last episode, if you haven't heard yet, for my people watching on YouTube or listening on major podcast platforms, we talked about the airing grievance of being a programmatic trader from programmatic challenges. And so if you have not listened yet, I strongly recommend you that you do, because even though this episode is going to be is a different topic, I still feel like what we shared last week is so important. So I'll encourage you to go ahead and subscribe, but also go back and listen to that podcast, share on LinkedIn, share on our social media, tag us, ask us questions, get the conversation going, and see how many of us are actually thinking the same thing, but not saying it out loud. So, Brett, thank you again for coming back on the podcast. Real quick, for those who don't know you yet, give us a quick intro of you.
Absolutely. So my name is Brett Middleton. Mm-hmm. I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I work for Canvas Worldwide out of LA as the Associate Director of Programmatic Media. Mm-hmm. I work on Stars Entertainment. Fabulous client to work on, managing their programmatic efforts with their team. And let's see, I've got 2 daughters, nice. Blair and Sloan. I'm going to go a little bit more personal this time. I am an amateur Neil Diamond karaoke singer, and still play some video games in my advanced age as a 35-year-old. Us guys really never grow up.
My husband is big on video games too, so it's a safe space. He actually got me the Switch for Christmas, and I was like, this is so sweet. And I was playing on it during the the Christmas travel. I was like, this is so awesome. What have I been missing my whole life? This is awesome.
One of these next episodes that we do together, we'll play like some Mario Party or Mario Kart while we talk.
Oh, we should. I don't have Mario Kart, but I can invest in it. I do have Mario Bros, because that's one of the things. I was like, if you give me a Switch, I want to be able to play the same type of Mario I played on the Game Boy way back when. He was like, well, I don't know if the game is still out, but this game is pretty close. So he got me Mario Bros, something deluxe edition, whatever.
Nice. Okay.
It's different, but it reminds me of the Game Boy.
I was one of the lucky few that got a PlayStation 5 like years back when they were first. I got on like a 4 a.m. Best Buy drop, and we have a Switch. I do love the Switch though.
Switch is fun. The Switch is fun. Okay, so you heard it here. We'll have a Mario Party soon. So if you're interested, holla at me, and we'll make sure to let you tap in for free into the party. And for everybody else, it'll be paid. No, I'm kidding.
We'll do something where people in your school can hop into a Mario Kart race, and if they win, they'll get free training.
No, that would be really cool. That would be really good to spice it up a little bit. We're not doing it like the meta world, but we're doing it Mario Kart way. Okay, guys. So I do want to ask Brett, because right before we started recording, he shared some very fun facts about his college journey. And so talk to us about your college journey. What happened?
Yeah. Well, I will also preface that conversation by saying I growing up, my stepmom was in marketing. So I had a person that I looked up to who was like in marketing advertising, and it seemed cool. So I had an idea that it's what I wanted to do. So I went into college pursuing a marketing degree. I made it into my second year, where I started having to take business law, economics, accounting in the same semester. And I was trying to cram through all these courses to get to the fun stuff. And I hated every second of it, and my grades started going down. So I took a semester off. I worked in Alaska for a summer, and I
Nice.
came back and became a theater major for a year. Um, then I graduated with a degree in sociology.
I'm
So
laughing because my mom was a director of marketing for many years for an airline company when we live in Dakar, Senegal. The airline company is now called SN Brussels Airlines, but back in the days, it used to be called C.A.M.P.A.I.G.N. So I remember seeing her like in the Dawn Draper, and I always refer to that show because he had like the big board and the presentation, except she had like big earrings, red lip, really sexy, not sexy, but really like powerful suit. And I'm like, yo, this is bomb. She works in marketing. I'm trying to work in marketing. So I always knew I wanted to be in marketing. I failed marketing 101 twice because it was so boring. And the only thing about marketing, if nobody knows, is that it's all about definition and it's all about those terms and it's stupid. It's all about acronyms. And guess what? That's what programmatic is all about. SSP, DSP,
we're right.
fucking CDP, whatever it is, like you can CPM, CPC, like it's all about those acronyms. So even though I took marketing twice,
Yeah.
I landed in this industry, and I'm like, damn, this is stupid. It's really stupid. Why do we do this to ourselves? But anyway.
Yeah. In a phone call this week, I said the words POV on SOV.
Wait, the point of view of
On share of voice.
share of voice. I knew that. Everybody understood. Hilarious. We the little stuff that gets us going around here. But anyway, so yeah, thank you. So we didn't do this last episode, but before we get into today's conversation, which is all about automation, right? The A word. As a trader, we hear things like automation, optimization, automation, or things here and there. You are going to share some very, very, very fun ways to automate a day-to-day, your day-to-day as a trader. If you keep doing this every single time, when you're setting up a campaign, or whatever you're going to share some tips, right? So we're looking forward to that conversation. So hang tight. But before we get there, I need you to share 2 wins and a challenge, which is something I do with every coaching call that I have, every community calls, because we're so good at talking negative about ourselves, about what happened to us, about a situation, that we forget to see the blessings that happen or the great stuff that happened. So share with us 2 wins. It could be in the last week or in the last month. And I also encourage one thing. It can be 2 wins, but one needs to be professional, one needs to be personal. And then a challenge can be either professional or personal.
Got it. Ooh. Let's see. Wins. My Dallas Cowboys are maybe not gonna, oh boy, I just realized that at the time these episodes come out, the Super Bowl will have already happened. Just personal wins. My Cowboys have won the Super Bowl.
Wow. Is this a prediction, a wish, a hope?
This is we're guys, just so you know, we're recording this in January. The Cowboys have not yet played the Buccaneers. They are going to win, and they will go on to win the Super Bowl. So that has been a big personal one for me.
Okay, we're gonna go roll with it.
A second win. Let me see. I'll make this one professional. I was definitely in a place where I was a little bit burnt out in the fall, and like, I don't know if it's a combination of Christmas break, and just sort of like getting back in the swing of things. Like, this just happens where you're in programmatic or any field in media. I feel like in particular, sometimes all the stuff just falls at once, and it feels like over the last month or so, I'm just in a good place professionally. So I'm happy with that.
That's good.
Gosh, that is a tough one. I am struggling with taking vacation in any kind of meaningful way. I looked at it in 2022, and I never took off more than 2 days in a row, which I really think, I think it's bad.
No, Brett. Okay, everyone, if you're listening, don't be like Brett. This is not okay. Everybody deserves some time for themselves. You deserve to unplug. You deserve to take 5 days without even looking like remembering where you work. So we're gonna call it for Brett in 2023. He's gonna do better. We already know he's gonna do better because he's gonna be amazing.
I've already have a trip planned in May.
Perfect.
Already
Boom.
talked with the team.
Yeah.
It's happening whether I want it to or not at that point. We'll see.
Exactly. That's good. That's good. That's a good way to put things into perspective, like into action. I mean, yeah, good. That's a very interesting challenge. I did that because I'm great at taking vacation. But working for yourself,
Yeah.
when
Well,
you take vacation.
I said it in the last episode that
Yeah.
like I work in like sprints and then I rest a little bit. So like I
Yeah.
do give myself a lot of time to
Yeah,
kind
of
of
course.
relax.
Like
But
self-care.
yeah, but
Yeah.
actually not checking the inbox and not having to go in and check on a campaign or like make creative
Yeah.
rotations, like that's tough.
That is really tough. And I can definitely relate. And that's why we're looking forward to your
Yeah.
tips today to talk about minimizing effort and increasing automation when it comes to things like setting up, but also like I think the morale of the story that we're about to share is that people feel burnt out because they do repetitive tasks that can sometimes be automated. Sometimes they cannot. So talk to us about your POV on this topic. Like what are some of the steps somebody could take to not feel burnt out when it comes to like things they do almost every time? And that's from a trader perspective as well. But if you're an account manager, if you're in sales, if you're a hiring manager, if you're a lead, if you're a director or a VP, I think you should hang tight and listen, because we don't always hear a trader share those things, those challenges. And as a business, we focus on sales, 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 revenue, revenue. But the trader is what allows the nurturing of that sale. So it's really important that you pay attention from that perspective. Like, what can you do to make your team better, more productive based on what we're sharing? Because we struggle every day with those. Or Brett has found a solution and he's ready to share.
Yeah, and thank you very much for that intro. So um I will say that these tips that I'm going to kind of walk through, I'm going to touch on sort of each phase along the way that I go through in a programmatic campaign, from planning to building to really like the stewardship of that campaign, and any quick, like any actionable tips I can give you, and we'll sort of just like overview that part of the process as well too. There are going to be just a lot of things that we can talk through, like just the ins and outs of each phase of a campaign's like creation, that I think we'll find some interesting stuff to talk through. So starting off with the planning process, and I will also say this isn't going to be purely like set it and forget it automation type stuff, utilization of tools.
Yeah.
It's going to be a combination of things. So in the planning phase, one of the challenges that I think that people struggle with the most, when they're getting started, is like, how the hell do I even go about the process of like identifying what audiences are out there? Audience in particular feels like a tough one. I think a lot of people have a feel for it, right? Like they get a research tool, or they just get really comfortable in their DSPs searching for audiences. They've run enough campaigns that like they have an idea of what audiences that they're going to execute on the next campaign. However, I think that one of the things that programmatic people really struggle with is understanding the history of our audiences over time and analyzing a particular audience segment if we're utilizing similar targeting across multiple campaigns. I think that programmatic experts and programmatic traders should spend time creating a backlog of their audiences, their IDs that they've used on previous campaigns, and pulling performance reports across campaigns to look at, say, like over the past 2 or 3 years, for, you know, an e-commerce client, right? The targeting has, the clients used several first party, third party, behavioral and contextual segments for targeting. But let's say that they really focus on like streetwear. They're sort of like an Adidas, like underdog kind of brand that they're working on. So they found that hip hop and rap, like music segments, perform well. That's the kind of insight that I think a lot of us have, right? Like
Yeah.
we can say that like our audience likes this kind of music or they exhibit these behaviors, but having the data to actually like back that up and look at how that has gone over time, have a list of the audiences that you've used on previous campaigns and say like how their performance was and their key, and like the key KPI that you focus on. I don't think we put enough effort on sort of that backlog of performance history. And a lot of times we focus on creating new audiences rather than just understanding what really has worked in the past and accessing what we've done.
So what I'm hearing is that, first I agree, but what I'm hearing is that take the time to actually build up your own audience playbook. I'm going to call it like an audience playbook, right? So over your time, you as a trader, you ran a campaign in the education industry, in the retail industry, in some type of industry, hospitality, pharmacy, you name it. And you've come across those same set of data segments or ideas of partners that have performed well or bad. And so standardize some of that because now you know it's working because of that backlog that you're referring to. Like you have data to prove that it's working. I do want to ask a follow-up question because I do get that question a lot in the community or when I do like corporate training and I train teams at the time. How do you even get started when you don't have the backlog?
Yeah. That's a great question. Personally, the YouTube Insights tool that's provided by Google, I don't know if you're familiar. For people who are working within DV360, there is a tool. I want to say the URL is literally like insights.youtube is how it starts with. You can request access from your DV360 reps. YouTube Insights, you put in, you know, sorry, I've got to walk through. I've got to help my daughter in Minecraft really quickly while we talk through this.
That's okay. Do it. Hi.
So the
That is absolutely okay. This is the life we
I
live.
forgot what I was saying.
I had to go get my baby a few times during a podcast episode before, so you're absolutely okay. Keep doing your thing.
The YouTube Insights tool allows you to actually plug in specific behaviors, pick audience segments, you know, so like if let's say that you are an e-commerce brand, if you are a brand that's large enough that, you know, you're being tracked within YouTube's Insights, you can just put in your client's name into the YouTube Insights tool and you're going to get a full breakdown of the, you know, the age, the demographic overlays that you should apply, contextual YouTube content, open exchange content that people engage with, you know, a full, you can actually have YouTube Insights create a deck for you within the browser. There's just like a download up in the button up in the top right hand column. You click create slides and it'll generate this like 30 to 40 slides on your audience. You can compare them against a baseline of, you know, everyone 18 plus in the US, or using the example of that sort of like Adidas like brand, right? If hip hop rap music fans are your target audience, you know, you can compare how the hip hop rap universe that likes your brand compares overall in like their media usage versus, you know, the baseline of everyone 18 plus. So
yeah,
even without using ComScore or MRI, I'm able to, you know, based on the information that I'm able to get either from the client or just understanding the brand at a basic level, I can start to access the channels that they follow on YouTube and the content that they watch and get an idea of audience segments that I can use
Right.
based on YouTube's experience and
Yeah.
insights.
So, okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. So definitely tap into your DSP resource. Brett is mentioning a special tool, YouTube what? YouTube Insight and
YouTube
360.
Insights, yeah.
Um,
Anyone working with DV360 should be able to reach out to their reps, and if they haven't used this tool for some reason, a lot of people that even work in DV360 haven't used it.
yeah,
Yeah, just ask your rep about YouTube Insights, and
yeah.
it's a very easy, cool tool.
I would even say, even if you're not running YouTube inventory, right? This
Yep,
is not a YouTube
it's
campaign.
really like a
Yeah.
ComScore or MRI Lite,
Yeah,
where
I was gonna say
yeah,
it would be very beneficial to still request that access and look at those insights, because then you can learn from that audience. And so, so the short answer is that yes, if you don't have previous data or previous performance data on that audience, then yes, you are relying on media planning tools like MRI Simmons you just mentioned. There are so many out there. I was going to start Squad, whatever. You can also relay on your DSP if there's any insight tools that they offer. But I think the biggest thing that we need to remember is that, and that's why he said, this is not a set it and forget it, is that once you start running those audiences, one, emphasize the word testing. Okay, you need to test different audiences, different partners. Two, I would add, don't be afraid to reach out to those partners. If something's not performing, you spending some money, you better reach out to those partners and be like, you're not working, I'm not spending no more, I'm taking my money somewhere else. And I bet you those partners are going to come up with like concrete solutions for you and advise you of even audience segments or what we're doing wrong or things like that. Okay, and that's also how you build a network. And then
yep,
lastly, you said start keeping track of those audiences so that next time you run either the same advertiser, similar industry, you know how to start. And that's where the automation comes from, like the minimizing of efforts come in. Like knowing that every single pharmacy brands that I've ran, these one partners, providers, data providers have worked really well. You start with those. Then if you want to test others, then we test others. But I think it's a very valuable insight here, Brett. So thank you for sharing. What's another thing we can look at?
yeah. So after we get past, we've received a client brief, we have a basic plan, we've identified the audiences that we want to work on. I have one more thing I'll touch on within planning, that I think I didn't spend enough time focusing on, and that is, as you are working through your campaign planning process, understanding how you want to develop your media plan in programmatic, thinking about the very like specific campaign requirements of like the types of media that you're going to set up, how like thinking through the actual like line item and insertion order setup thing, like as you're going through the planning process, I think is really crucial. I found that when I was earlier on as a trader, right, I would come up with the audience, I would have my budget, I have my media plan, but at that point I hadn't actually thought through how I was going to execute it because I didn't have that knowledge to be able to really think through what the campaign was going to look like until I sat down in platform. And I think that's one of the challenges of getting into programmatic. Understand, and what I mean particularly here is there are things like the flighting of a campaign, and particularly when you get into DV360. I'm sorry, I'm talking to a chair, so I'm having a hard time with this. Oh, hello. Were you able to hear me on the headphones the whole time I was talking? So I was like,
Funny. Okay. So we have a special guest that's joining us.
welcome back.
So if we had to recap like the top 3 points, right, of what you just said for our audiences, what would those be?
Great question. Because I did get distracted as I was talking. Um, really, I think that the first point would be, as you're going through the planning process, I think one of the things that early traders will struggle with is looking ahead to when I'm actually setting up the campaigns. What are some of the things that I'm going to need to know, not only like know to build the campaign, but are there things that I can do in my plan to make my job in setting up the campaign and in QAing my campaign easier? So one of the things that I have been doing lately is, anytime like a problem comes up in a campaign, I had to go back
Taking
and
notes. Yeah.
rebuild something. I got questions on something like, you know, one of the things that I didn't fully understand is like, right, talking about YouTube specifically.
Mhm.
If you're going to run skippable and non-skippable on YouTube and you're trying to plan out the amount of impressions, views, whatever you're going to get, an early trainer may not know, a trader probably doesn't know that you really should plan those lines separately,
Yeah.
because skippable and non-skippable can't be bought together.
Mhm.
So they're going to be bought with CPM and CPV rather than like the
Yeah.
same methodology. So
Yeah. And
that's one
that's,
where, like, if you know that is going to happen in the campaign, how should you work that into your media plan to make your job easier?
yeah, I love that because it goes back to what I always say is that, being a great trader start with like the onboarding process. And sometimes it's not up to them, right? It's up to the company that hires them. But ultimately it has to start with the onboarding process. It's like, what are we doing? How do we do things internally? Okay. How are we training these people? Is the training, somebody just training you? Is there like a concrete standard? Is it a process? Is it like step by step? I think it should be all the above,
Yeah.
because one, everybody learns a different way, but also all of these above are very important in how you're going to retain that information you just shared. Like, oh, those line items should be separated. And so I think the initial effort might feel like it's more than we want to, but it can save so much more time for somebody else that's coming on the team. That's why I always encourage like the hiring manager, the lead who's responsible for that team, to come up with like a standard. This is how we set up YouTube line items. These are the fake friends when setting up the YouTube line item. This is how you set up a display campaign. You have to have those standards and processes in place. And sometimes it's as easy as like a quick video, a Loom video. I don't care. Make it really simple for you and your team. Keep it simple. Very, very simple. Don't gotta be fancy. You don't have to make it HD if you don't want to, right? It has to be easy to watch, right? But just like what Brett said, it's one of those things you don't think about
Yeah.
until you've made that mistake. But
Mhm.
if you made that mistake, why not teach somebody not to make that mistake, right? So take the time, even though right now it sounds like, oh, this is more work than they're telling me that is going to happen. In the long run,
Well,
once you take the initial time, it will save up some time.
Hey y'all. So I am announcing the biggest, the brightest, the loudest party. No, I'm kidding. um, biggest boot camp series ever. Nobody else is doing this out there, okay? So what is it, you ask? Let me tell you. We all know that optimization as a trader is one of the most important. I mean, you hear me say this all the time on the podcast and the content. You got to optimize, find time, but time is a commodity and sometimes you just don't have enough time to. So I'm going to be doing 4 master classes in March, once a week for only an hour. So you only have an hour commitment for me. The very first class will be about best practicing which targeting levers to look for, how to look for those targeting levers, and when to make the decision of using this targeting levers to optimize your campaign. The second class will be about how to optimize inventory. Think about site lists, think about data providers, and I will have live example where I will walk you through a pivot table in an Excel sheet with report with real data to help you really continue, but also I'll provide some best guides and some workbooks so that you can follow through and then you can take it with you and implement in your campaigns. The third class is going to be how to optimize for the other less popular metrics, such as like frequency, reach, recency, time of day. So we're also going to have access to a report where we'll take you through how to look at each of those metrics and also decide like, hey, at this frequency, we are meeting our goal X, or we don't need to be increasing frequency because there's no return on this change, etc. And the last class is going to be with a special partner that we're going to announce very, very soon, but they're going to help us understand the difference between AI versus manual optimization. And they're also going to have a live example, okay? So it is a really cool masterclass that I'm going to be offering. It will not be free. It will have a small investment. But if you're interested in just finding out more information, go ahead and go to helenparker.com/optimization masterclass, and then join our waitlist. And then you'll get on our waitlist and you'll receive emails about details, how to sign up to each masterclass, how much it will take, if you're signing up in a group, how much discount you'll be eligible for, who's going to be our special partner, and also if you have the opportunity to maybe sponsor somebody. There's a lot of opportunity there'll be a lot of good stuff coming to you your way. So if you're interested, helenparker.com/optimization masterclass. Again, it's a 4-hour series, but each will be break down by hour once a week, and it will each have a specific topic of optimization, and you may have access to guides and workbooks during that time. So it's really cool. You have nothing to lose. Let's go ahead and level up that skill set. Let's go ahead and teach you how to be efficient when it comes to optimization, because God knows time is a commodity and we don't have a lot of it. Okay. So helenparker.com/optimization masterclass. Thank you.
I will say, oh man, I feel like I just keep saying
Right.
saying things, but even like from a very selfish perspective,
Yeah.
I do not care if I'm making the job easier on someone else after they're coming in, right? But if I make their job easier, that it makes my job easier too.
Yeah.
Like I think focusing on mistakes or errors that you have made, those are such great opportunities, because not only should you identify this as a thing that you should adjust in your plan, like referencing skippable versus non-skippable. If that's a thing that I've run into where I know that it's easier for me to separate those out on my plan somehow and notate that I want to have skippable and non-skippable inventory, it is helpful, like you said, for someone else to kind of see that process and understand that it'll make their job easier, but it makes my job easier. And
now you don't have to queue after them more.
Yeah.
Or you have to go back and fix it for them and stop what you're doing, and
getting to like the nuts and bolts of how this works for people. I think that like if you work in DV360, I'll give you a very specific example. Export your STFs, which are structured data files for anyone who doesn't know, that show you like basically the makeup of the campaign. There's a campaign, insertion order, line item, ad group, and ad STFs.
Yep. I love that recommendation. And that's part of the automation, like saving time. Like,
yes. Is there something similar in Trade Desk? I haven't used Trade Desk in years.
There's a way to export that stuff. And there's even a way to import that after you make change, but those are more there's even an option to template some ad groups or campaign setup. I can't remember which one is two, even though I'm in the Trade Desk every day. But I strongly recommend that you do that, because I actually worked for this agency in Canada. Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful. What is that? Is that a receipt?
Mm-hmm.
That's Kohl's. Good for you. Save that Kohl's cash.
Where was I going? Oh, in Montreal. It was in Montreal. I can't remember the thing. I was hoping to remember, but they had every SDF in the books, like templated. Like if you had to set up for a specific client, like a big brand client, these were all the SDF. Like this was for this brand of the client, or this advertiser, things like that. And it was very well organized, and it was easy to just jump in the day-to-day, because we know when we were requested to set up under this advertiser, but for this brand or this branch of the advertiser, these were the STF to use, and then you updated it. And you might be thinking like, yeah, but you still got to go and update. Yes, you still do. But don't you rather have your 5 ad groups automatically set up for you and you just update or bulk edit inside of DV360 or the Trade Desk or you name it, versus having to set it up manually every time? It's annoying. And here's another thing too. I think that's what Brett is trying to tell us, is that the use of STF also minimize human errors, especially when it's templated. Yeah. So for instance, you mentioned, I don't think if you mentioned this episode or the last one now when I think about it, but you mentioned making errors and learning from our mistakes. I remember vividly spending my whole monthly budget in 2 days, right? Because I forgot to switch from daily budget to lifetime budget. How many of us did that? Don't lie to me. How many of us have done that? When you template the STF at the insertion order, you can have that option automatically set as something else, right? And I can't even remember DV360 even offer a daily option nowadays, but I know Facebook does. But that's the whole point. Like, what can you template? How can you? It's not about working hard here. It's about working smart, because it's hard. Remember what you said in the last episode? It's hard. Okay. So yeah.
But so the reason I bring up STFs and planning, yes, I think, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I love your notebook. The reason I bring up STFs, which is very much a building tool in the planning phase, is that, like, as we think about thinking through your campaign setup requirements and planning, I bring that up because when I look at the STFs, a lot of the columns, right, like that correspond to like the buy type, the fee structure, the measurement, a lot of the columns in there are predetermined, can be set sort of like templatized, and can be ignored. However, there are a lot of columns in there that I think should be included in your media plan, right? So like if you structure your media plan with your STFs in mind, like go through and look at the columns that are in an STF and build out your media plan with the knowledge of everything that I should specify in the media plan to let me be able to go and build my STF with all the settings that I need to update, because there's only so many things that I actually really have to update.
No, that's true.
STFs.
That's true.
That's what makes that updating your campaign planning process based on the template that you're going to use to edit your campaign in a data file. Like, I think that's a thing that people should do more often, and which segues into the actual campaign setup process. Personally, what I like to do, you touched on this a little bit, but what I have done and I have found to be very helpful is if people set up templates of their campaigns in the platform. And what I mean there is, like, I like to go through and think through all the settings, right? Like, I want to spend some time thinking through, like, what actually is my device bidding strategy, and what are the videos that I need to work on? What is my keyword exclusion list that I should apply, and how do I really want the insertion order pace to be set versus the line item pace to be set? So like and if you go in platform, create every insertion order and different type of line item, different type of ad group that you have come up in a campaign, you can then take that template, export it through your STF tool, and then go through your process of sort of duplication, editing of names, budgets, and flight, and you access your backlog of targeting IDs that you've used. Just grab those targeting IDs and put them into your STFs, and you've really taken out the majority of campaign editing and creation.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about. It's like, if it honestly, it's annoying, and sometimes Google updates and the STF has to be updated, and that's where it seems like it's taking us more effort. But I promise you, the initial effort will pay off. Like, I remember setting 10 line items in less than 15 to like 10 minutes, okay, for like multi 7-figure brand, because I had STF for each again, type of branch within that brand, right? So instead of like setting up 30 line items in between 3 campaigns, it was like update, update. Even the creative upload can be automated, right? And of course, the situation that I'm referring to had CM360, so it's fairly easy to bulk edit. But here's also some things, like you take the daddy went to, he'll be right back, okay? When you take that initial effort to do the step, it will pay off. You're becoming more efficient. You're spending less time on that. And here's the magic word, is that when you're using that STF, the rest of your team can benefit from it. So when the rest of the team can benefit from it, there's less human errors that happen because it's automated. It's automated. That's what we're trying to avoid. It's so complicated to be a trader. Okay. It's not impossible. It's complicated. Don't make it harder on yourself. Make it easy by coming up with those automated things, like he mentioned, like the STF, for instance, and then make it happen. And then once in a while, update them. Once in a while, you'll come to use the STF and be like, actually, this is an option. I can add an STF now. Or things like you mentioned, excluding IDs, excluding universal site list, tapping into your brand safety or your post-verification partners. All of those can be automatically set up into an STF when you know the ID, of course. And that's if the ID doesn't change, right? So
one STF hack to let me know if you're familiar with this. So have you, in DV360, have you ever used the budget segments at the insertion order level, and then you have leftover budget for like the first budget segment, but you can't edit in platform?
No, you cannot.
Oh,
you have to move that. Yeah. Can you do it?
You can do it in STFs. You can edit the first budget segment for like that's already passed, lower the budget for the first segment to what it actually spend. So you won't have those actualized dollars that are just sitting there.
What? I can't believe this. That's kind of scary though, no?
Well, and it will, the system will not let you upload the STF after again, just for anyone who didn't catch this, like, let's say I have a 15-day flight. I have budgeted, there's 15K total. I'm supposed to spend 8K in the first 8 days and 7K in the second 7 days. Yeah. But after the first 8 days of the budget segment, only spent $6,000. So if I don't update this, I'm gonna have 2K that doesn't spend.
Yeah. You're right.
You won't flag it for me because
that's true. Yeah, and it looks like an underspend. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
However, we can't update that in DV360, but I can export an STF and then update the first budget segment just by editing the number for that segment, and then upload the STF and it'll update it.
That is $1 million trick here, because I specifically remember, because the reason why it's $1 million trick for me is because it gets confusing at the end of the flight, right? 6 months later, you're like, all right, this is not the true budget because I had to keep adding and then it didn't do the math correctly and etc. And so that is going to keep it clean for you. That's really great.
Exactly. And if you set the budget too low for the first budget segment, like if it actually spent, $8,000 and I put it at $79.99 or something like that, it will flag it for me and it won't let me upload it. So just so you know.
Great.
So STFs are wonderful, and you need to think about them as you're planning, utilize them as you build. I'm going to refer back to them here in just a second, but to tie a bow on sort of like the minimization of effort process, performance. You talked a little bit about COA. I don't have a strong COA opinion, not being like in trade desk every day, but I do have an opinion on how traders can improve their time, their overall efficiency in performance. And it may be an oversimplification, but in my opinion, you should focus primarily on performance deep dives, understanding, demographics, psychographic overlays. What should my device bidding strategy be? What type of URLs should I be allowing versus disallowing? I perform that kind of analysis in between campaigns, really, or as not part of a specific campaign. I used to waste a lot of time creating reports. Like for each campaign, I would create a report, that showed the device performance, right? And that's feels good at the time because I'm learning something, but but like in understanding performance, we should also be adding some optimization in and really looking at performance, in areas like device or geo. A lot of the time, it doesn't make sense for us to focus on those on a single campaign. We should pull those reports cross campaign. They should be evergreen, and we shouldn't worry about those things, I feel, in flight as much. In flight, we should focus our optimizations towards the single primary KPI of the campaign and making sure that we pace. So I think that, like, really in terms of managing performance, traders should really focus on those bones, those essentials in a campaign, and really not stress yourself out too much on like, oh my God, the click-through rate is, at point
the
2% to my display, and I really want 3.3.
Yeah, the vanity KPIs. I mean, I think it's a great point because you're right. We have a main KPI, and that's also part of the automation that we're referring to. Like you mentioned, some reports you can, I know that DV360 have already have some template, but you can create your own. Okay, and you can schedule them, which is really a hack there. People don't schedule enough reports.
I like to create and schedule, like I said, like URL reports,
have like weekly reports, something like that, even daily report when it comes to pacing. And I'm really referring to the hustlers and gangsters out there that don't have like a data visualization tool, like a Domo or Tableau, to automate some of that stuff. So the people that are actually struggling like me, that's what you should do. Now, I do believe that everybody should have some type of visualization tool, but if that's not the case, this is what we recommend: really scheduling those reports, really making those own templates. But also, if you only have 15 minutes or less to optimize, which is something as a masterclass I actually teach, you got to focus on your campaign goal and that main KPI. And then based on that main KPI and a campaign goal, you go find that most important targeting lever. So let me explain. The targeting lever is, I actually have an acronym that I came up with. It stands for campaign. So the word campaigns. So C is for creative ad format, audience data element. M is for mechanics, as if the technology, so the devices, placement above or below the fold. A is amount of time, so think frequency. I is inventory, so think about supply, site, or sellers. Geographical areas for G. N is a number to start with, so base bid. And then S is the schedule of the day or day of the week. So campaigns, each of those letters stands for the targeting levers you want to know about. And based on that main KPI, you want to start with. Okay. So I'm going to add in the description, actually, the cheat sheet that I created for people that don't know where to start when, again, they have a minimum of time to optimize and pull those analysis or those insights like you're telling us to do. To just help, like, for instance, data elements. When are we supposed to look at audiences? Should we look at audiences for an awareness campaign, or should we just focus on frequency, things like that? And that's how we become more efficient. But it's all about templating. Bravo, c'est bien. It's all about templating, but also it's all about like how can you make it more efficient by just looking at what's most important. Now, I would encourage once in a while to go dive deep into all of them, because that's how you're able to really see things that maybe you haven't seen before, or tell a story that you want to tell, right? Like, I'll never forget, I worked on a dental association brand way back when, and the brand had most of the business owners that would convert were on iPhones versus Androids, which was interesting, right? Because it shouldn't matter. But then what it told me is that, well, if higher people are converting on iPhone, maybe more budget should go there. No, touche pas. So those are just, and that was back in the days. That was before, all of the iOS things. So don't come at me sending me hate mails for this. That was back in 2016 or 17.
I would never come at you, for that. I think it's funny because media agency people, we love iPhones. I mean, that's the simple case, is like we prefer, we strive, we like desire, crave that simplicity, that minimalism, all of the functionality. So like I don't know. I love my
Yeah.
iPhone, and I find targeting iOS users frustrating, but
Yeah. Yeah, because there's limitation in measurement and limitation in reporting on conversion. Is annoying. And anyway, that should be a happy hour conversation.
yeah, it could be.
But yeah. Mhm.
But so performance.
Okay.
It's a great conversation, and I'm really glad that we got to work this into here. And
Mhm.
to me, just to circle back to the whole, like, some of this is automation, some of this is sort of process. This one, to me, how traders think about performance optimization and managing live campaigns is really about automation of your thinking and your thought process, and like sort of hacking the way that your brain works. Because I feel like earlier on in your career, right, like I said, you can tend to this is the area where you feel like you should dive in and lean in the most. However, it's where
Yeah.
you have the least amount of time.
Oh yeah.
So I think, like you said, the campaigns process, that's perfect. Those are the things that you should think of. Like I said, cross campaign, they're evergreen reports that you think of, and you adopt your standard campaign buying processes over time. Like,
Mhm.
well, hold on, I was going to give away too much of a secret sauce, but I don't want to do that. So go through the process of, if you find things like certain device types or certain browsers or certain device manufacturers, if those things seem to be winning over time, you can't often see those signals in a single campaign. Look at those reports over time, and then when you're working on a campaign, focus on the very nitty-gritty, the things that we're judged for, right? Like, we are judged based on the pacing, the delivery, and our primary KPI. So keep it simple while you're optimizing a campaign, but then dig into the fun stuff around it and learn the ins and outs of every report that you can create, right?
Yeah.
Like,
And
you should,
automate as much, schedule as much as you can, and
with
have a great note taker.
yeah, exactly. You can utilize like here's a good one. There's a tool called here, let me find it. I use well, even before just like having a specific tool, if you have a app that is a note-taking app that can record sound and transcribe it, that is like absolutely a game changer. I have one that I think is called, yeah, Otter, Otter.
Yeah, I've heard of Otter. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, so like I'll have it transcribe some meeting notes for me because I have a bad memory. But yeah, performance is crazy. Like, being able to monitor campaigns, you need to automate the process that you go through and sort of focus on fewer things. If I have one other tip that I could share, have you ever used STFs for QA? Yes.
Yes, that's a great point. And tell us why.
The best thing about this, like I said, the human brain is not set up to perform like a really accurate QA in platform. And the reason I say that is, if you think about the UI of like DV360 or Trade Desk, we don't get to see everything in one place, right? All the important information. SDFs do let you do that. We break the whole campaign out into a place where, column by column, I can see what difference are there in each row, in each insertion order, in each line item. And there are things that should be unique across those. Like, if I have a retargeting line item, I'm often going to need to set different pacing settings for that versus in different frequency settings than I would something that's more of like a conquesting or prospecting audience, because those retargeting audiences tend to be smaller, more expensive, so I need to treat them differently. So that's an instance where that knowledge is important in QA, and being able to see everything laid out in an SDF, I can then say there are certain things that should be the same across the board. If they are not, that's an issue. I can see the names, I can see that my insertion order name, the audience matches the name that I'm using in the line item. That's important. Like, these are things that's just hard to do in platform.
Yeah, I mean, so much that you just shared. My little extra guest is really distracting right now. But I think the whole point of this whole conversation, if you're listening, is that what Brett is trying to clearly say is that you got to utilize what the platform has for you. And in the case of DV360, it has STF. And I know that in the case of, no, Jade, no pasa. In the case of Trade Desk, there are some options to template and pull, import, export. I mean, even in C.A.M.P.A.I.G.N, you can template some of that. I remember it's not called STF in C.A.M.P.A.I.G.N, it's something else. It's not coming back to me, but I remember templating a bunch of them to QA. Okay. How, placements were set up, ads were set up, creative were set up, etc. So utilize that time, take that time to really invest in, again, I feel like I'm repeating ourselves, right? But initially invest in that, in taking the time to come up with those templates and then go from there. And then of course you'll have to update it eventually. Okay. It's not a set and forget it, like Brett said.
Yeah.
So that's a
And
good recommendation. A great one.
yeah, STFs, that's the thing, is that like it is a campaign creation tool. It is an editing tool.
Yep.
However, I think if you're not using them for QA, I think you're really missing out. So
Yeah. There's a way.
Please do. Like that is a huge thing for anyone who like I said, people often don't like to QA other people's campaigns. It is hard. We have our own campaigns that we're working on. So I think if you can utilize SDFs to QA your own work, because the majority of the errors that we make in programmatic are in the same places.
Yeah.
Right. They're naming errors, they are budget, they are audience or creative a lot of the time. We assign the wrong creative, which we can check in SDFs a lot of the time because I don't know about in Trade Desk, but in DV360, the open exchange creatives, I'll see the creative IDs in the line item SDF. We have a YouTube ads SDF, right? So
yeah.
Like you can QA the full spectrum in SDFs, and I think that's something.
No, Jade.
It's huge.
I will also say that if you want to take it one step further, especially about the QA, I specifically remember when I was freelancing and contracting with Work Reduce. Shout out to Work Reduce. My supervisor, Chris Beck, he created this dope Excel sheet where you would download the campaign view in C.A.M.P.A.I.G.N. This is C.A.M.P.A.I.G.N. Campaign Manager. And you would download, you would download like the campaign view, the ad view, export it all, and then upload into that Excel that he made. And then it will literally say, yes, it's correct. No, it's not correct. And it's like, it was a beast. But the whole point of him spending so much time is that everything was automated. You could QA your own self, and the people QAing you could use that same Excel template. And so not only did it like save so much time, but also it reduced human error by X amount of time. And the campaign did not go for approval to a client, or like we did not approve anything to a client or launch anything with a client until both of those QA sheets were filled out and corrected, right? But like, I mean, I know it's, again, it sounds like a lot of work, but because he created that, he automated the QA process, and literally whoever was QAing you didn't have to edit anything but one or two things. And it reduced the time of QAing. And again, it just reduced the time of launching anything. So that's how you can take it to the next step, by using an SDF, by using any type of export import option that your DSP is offering in your favor, for your team, for yourself. Like, automate that stuff. You don't have to do it all the time, every day. I have this very fancy, ugly checklist that I share with the reach and frequency students when we go over QAing, the importance of QAing or setting up and things like that. But it's really very standard. And what I tell them is that you can use this checklist when you find a job, but just remember the way you set up a campaign, that's how you want to, she just disappeared. That's how you want to set up the QA checklist. And so it's just one of those things that you're going to have to, you got to do it. You just gotta, you just gotta do it. But you need to do it. You gotta do it. Because you can waste, spend so much time and budget with one simple error that can be fixed before in a QA session,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think it's a great way to wrap up the conversation today, because there's so much stuff we can do, and there's so much things we can talk about when it comes to QAing, to really minimizing our efforts as a trader, especially when we're not working with technologies that allows us to automate. So I mentioned the data visualization tool, project management tool, all of these are things that you can implement to help you be more efficient. If your company, if your team is not doing that, create it. Who cares? You're doing it for yourself. And then the rest of the team can benefit. But in the following career moves that you're going to have, you can take that experience and you can take that wisdom with you. So just see it that way. It's not just like you're good. It's not just like a present. You're not just fixing the present. It's not a solution just like you're going to use today. It's something that is going to teach you a lot about yourself. It's going to teach you leadership skills. It's going to teach you, I don't know. It's going to teach you a lot of other transferable skills for your next career move. So always remember that. Because again, it's a lot, right? It's a lot that's on our shoulders, like any other job. So making that extra step is beneficial, not today, but for tomorrow. Okay.
That's why they pay us the big bucks, it's I'm joking a little bit, but programmatic does get paid well compared to.
You're not lying. Yes.
Not lying.
Yes, yes,
so
they are.
It is worth it, people. Like, it is worth it. If you invest in yourself, invest in your processes to make your job easier on a day-to-day basis. Like I said, like you said, it really becomes a manageable career, something you can grow. And so like we discussed, I think creating a backlog of audiences that you access over time.
Can you hear her?
No, I can't.
You cannot?
No.
Oh my gosh, this microphone is the bomb. She's literally just yelling and singing to the dog. Okay.
For you.
Okay,
go
for it. Choose something else.
If we have a backlog of audiences that we access, if we think about the campaign setup process as we're planning, if we utilize STFs and shortcuts and templates in our campaign building, and then also are smart about how we monitor performance, focusing on just pacing and a clear KPI in flight, and then we use tools like STFs to QA our campaigns, the whole process becomes a little bit simpler. We make fewer errors and we're happier.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be sexy. It doesn't have to be fantastic. It doesn't have to cost anything. You have no idea how many times we just utilize Google Sheets, Excel, Microsoft Excel, and so many of those templated things. So keep it very simple yourself. Do apply pressure to do those things, because I know a lot of my friends in director, associate director position, in VP's position that have literally updated some of those processes that they developed for other agencies on the way. And in those leadership positions, they already done the work. They just are updating that, right? It's it's not recreating wheel. It's just about updating and adjusting based on your new audience. So that's what we would recommend. So Brett, I don't know if you can hear her, but she's so crazy. This is what I live. This is the life I'm doing right now, and I'm okay with that. Yes, ma'am. Umbrella, yeah. Hold on, let me say bye to Mr. Brett, okay? Okay.
Hi.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the second episode of the Programmatic Trader Wellbeing Series. Brett will be back next week. We're going to talk about staffing models, training, staff augmentation, basically what we call programmatic activation, the new fundamentals of our programmatic activation. We're going to talk about people, process, and the platform. Yeah. And that's next week. And Brett is going to come back with $1 million juices for you watching or listening. So again, Brett, thank you so much for coming by. If they want to reach out to you, how can they do that?
I do recommend LinkedIn, Brett Middleton at Canvas Worldwide. My website should be live as we speak. after the Cowboys have won the Super Bowl, thedailyprogger.com.
Daily Progress.
Progger, Progger, sort of like like an
Progress.
abbreviation of programmatic prog.
Yeah, I love it. And all of Brett's information is going to be in the show notes, the show description, on social media. And then you have my information if you need to just add Brett, like reach out to Brett. I can send you his information. So thank you everybody for listening. Don't forget to show us some love if you see any of the content about this episode, but also most importantly, don't forget to act on this insight. Okay. We're not just sharing this just because we look cute on a Monday afternoon. No, it's like we want you to act on this information so that you can get better in that you can be happier at the end of the day because you're becoming more efficient. You have more breaks during the day, like Brett is excellent at taking. So just remember that, be blessed, and we'll see you next week.